Hey folks, welcome back to the Lone Pine Tarot. For today's pick a card reading, we have a deeper dive, meaty subject that I always love to talk about, discuss, and do readings on, which is describing one of your past lives. So during these readings, we'll try to get into some of the details around maybe generally where you lived, maybe what time era, what kind of person you were, as well as your main struggles or lessons in that life, which could be applicable to the life you're living right now, which is why exploring past lives is always helpful in my opinion. But without further ado, let's get into picking the piles. So for pile number 1s, I have number 28, Ocean of Emotion. Find a safe place to express your true feelings. For my pile number 2s, I have number 47, Celebrate the Sacred Gap. Give thanks for buffer time. And for my pile number 3s, I have number 15, Build and Breaks, Saunter Slowly. So after you've meditated on the piles and decided which one you would like read for you today, as always, the timestamps are down in the description box as well as the top pinned comment underneath the video. So when you click on the timestamp for your reading, I will see you in our discussion about describing one of your past lives for today. Bye. Hello, my lovely pile number 1s. Welcome to your pick a card reading today that is all about describing one of your past lives, likely important to the lessons you're learning in the life right now that you're living as you watch this video. As you recall, the card used to pick your pile was number 28, Ocean of Emotion. Find a safe place to express your true feelings. Lovely card. Very watery imagery. And the reading, like most of my readings, will be kind of in two separate sections. First, we're going to talk a little bit about who you were as a person, maybe get some details about geographically where this was on Earth with this past life, that kind of thing. And then the second section of the reading will be more about the lessons and the struggles and even potentially triumphs that you had in this past life, likely ones important for you to learn about right now on the path you're on in your current life, like I was saying. So I'm just going to set these cards down here with me. These are the lesson cards more towards the end of the reading. And let's first talk more about who you were, maybe where this generally was, okay? So we'll set your pile leader off to the left like usual. And then first we'll look at your oracle cards, and then I will draw some tarot cards too, of course, towards the end of drawing the cards. So first up we have from Nature's Whispers, number 16, Inner Truths. Okay. I get the sense, this isn't necessarily related to this particular past life pile ones, but I get the sense that you've been here a lot. And I know a lot of people have had a lot of lives here on Earth, but I feel like you're, like, I know it's cliche to say, but this is intuitively honestly what I'm seeing, that you're like a very old soul, because especially I say that because this figure right here, there's so many different paths that they're walking down or having to choose, and it's like they're smiling like they've been here before and they know how to navigate kind of the darkness of life, like the darkness of this cave, right? So I think you're a pretty old soul, pile number 1s, and I don't say that just as, you know, like the cliche saying. You have been here a lot. Definitely a wise person I'm seeing here in most of your lives, at least the more recent ones, right? Okay, and then your sacred destiny is action. So we have, yeah, that's an ocean. So far a lot of water imagery, I think, even in your inner truths. I'm just going to look at it a little closer here back with me. Yeah, like she's even got like a boat here. There's a watery path down this way. There's even like a river in this one. Let's see what else. Yeah, this past life may have been somewhere near water, and I know that's a little vague because most human civilization kind of tended to crop up near water because we need water to live, right? But yeah, a lot of storms, a lot of water. Okay. Maybe a lot of caves too, hence the cave imagery here in your inner truths. Maybe having to hide a lot too. We'll see what else pops out. I want to get the cards down before I say anything conclusive, but your archetypes card is, we have Visionary. You know, this came out in another reading recently. If you watched that video and got this card in your pile, That might be a little bit of a synchronicity for you, pile number ones. It says light attributes, capacity to envision what is not yet conceivable to others, willingness to proclaim a vision without regard for personal gain. And shadow attributes, selling insights to the highest bidder, compromising your vision to make it more acceptable. Okay. So you could have been, well, before I comment on it, let's get the other cards out. Your Elle Qui is Iris, she who changes, transformation, change, enchantment. Yeah, I'm getting mystic vibes off of you, pile number ones. I think that might tie into the old soul thing I was seeing earlier, where you've lived so many lives that now you're kind of at a spiritual stage with your soul that you're like, you're very in tune with the spiritual side of living because you've been here so many different times. It could have been in this past life that you did have spiritual abilities, hence visionary, and also with the Iris I'm seeing here. She's got is that a diadem, technically what it's called? Like a moon on her head, and moon in at least Oracle and Tarot decks tends to be about like intuition, like the High Priestess usually has a moon on her head in Tarot, if you're familiar with that card. Yeah. Maybe a bit of a priestess, a little bit of mystic spirituality vibes. Let's see what else pops out. Your hand from the tea leaf says, in need of help, assistance, and guidance. Yeah, I think you helped guide people, pile number ones, but I also think you didn't live a life of a lot of luxury yourself. I get like poor mystic vibes, like you didn't really require a lot from other people to live, but you were wise and you helped a lot of other people. Could be you did work in some sort of like religious or spiritual capacity, like literally, you know, it depends on the country and the religious or like religion or faith, I suppose. Like, you know, if this is like a Christian example, it could have been, you know, working as like a nun or a volunteer for the church, for example, or a monk, or it could have been, you know, like a monk if it was like Buddhist, right? Or Buddhism, I guess I should say. There's a lot about mysticism and seeing things, being visionary, being wise, having an old soul, and a lot about being near water and caves. But let's pull out your tarot cards before I continue here. I already pre-shuffled these, so Spirit, could you give me about 3 to 4 cards for pile number ones describing who they were and or where they were with this particular life that we're discussing here? Oopsie, big chunk came out. Alright. Flip out or stand out, please. Okay, so I want about 3 to 4 cards. Let's pick this one. We have Temperance reversed. Yeah, what is all this water? There was a lot about water. I don't know if you lived right on the ocean, but also Temperance reversed can mean imbalance of some sort. Okay, and then we'll pick out this card. We have 6 of Wands, which means victory. Someone on a horse in a field of grain. Okay, and then let's pick this card here. We have the Sun. Could be a hot location once again on, I believe this is an Egyptian god, so this is probably the Nile depicted here. A lot of water. Definitely by water of some sort in this life, pile number ones. For sure. I'm going to pull just one more card here. We have the Ace of Coins reversed. Yeah, not a lot of money though. You weren't rich. You didn't live the high life. You were not someone of luxury or luxurious means. Apologies if I do cover cards a little bit here with my limited space, but as I talk about different cards in detail, I'll try to pull them out as much as I can, and or you can rewind if you want to look at a card more specifically, but alright, put my deck down. Yeah, pile number ones, like I said, you were someone that was, you worked spiritually in this life, and or for a church, though I tend to get, or not a church necessarily, I guess I should say organized religion, because, you know, could be a temple in some religions, could be a mosque in other religions, etc., but some sort of organized religion like that. But I think most of you, I get more solitary vibes, like even if you were working with an organized religion with helping people or sharing guidance, you weren't necessarily always in agreement with that organized religion or like the authority of that structure of religion. And I think the reason why pile number ones is because intuitively I'm getting, like I said with your Inner Truths card, you're such an old soul that it was like you kind of saw past the human error or human flaws in interpretation of religion in this life, even though you technically served that religion or that type of spirituality for people. where it was like you served it faithfully, I think. And you serve people very, very, very well in this life, I can tell, but it was almost like people would come to you specifically for like wisdom and advice, because you had like you just knew more than what the religious texts or like the authority of that particular spiritual branch, whatever it was. Like you knew more that spoke to people than the actual religion itself. So yeah, and I also get like psychic vibes off of this, especially like I said with visionary here. This is like someone who is almost like a mystic. I mean, she's looking into a crystal ball here. Yep, capacity to envision what is not yet conceivable to others, proclaiming a vision without regard for personal gain, and then also she who changes, Iris down here. Yep, transformation, change, enchantment. That gives me High Priestess vibes a lot. That's about intuition for me, even though it doesn't necessarily say intuition on the tin here with the card. I'm trying to get a sense of country. I'm seeing a lot so far, like I said, about water. I definitely think you were by the ocean. And one little intuitive thing I did get when I was looking at your Inner Truths card over here was the word or the name Derinkuyu. If you're not familiar with what that is, in Turkey, I believe it is, there is an underground city named Derinkuyu. I believe it was only found out because someone was like digging extra room in their basement or something, and all of a sudden they found this tunnel, and lo and behold, there was like a whole underground city beneath that town, like hundreds to thousands of years old. I don't know all the details about it, so maybe you did live kind of someplace like that. I don't know how many underground cities are across Europe. I think they found other ones, at least in Turkey. So Turkey is one country I'm getting kind of a sense of here, especially if it was like near the water, near the ocean. Which I believe, if I remember right geographically, Turkey does have oceans on either side of it, both the north and south, but don't quote me on that. I'm not always the best at geography, at least in terms of maps, but yeah, or, maybe countries near there. I believe, like, Lebanon is near there. God, I think Syria is near there, too. Forgive me if I am butchering the geography, but that's kind of the sense I'm getting out of this. Somewhere kind of on the border of Europe and, like, the Middle East and, like, the Grecian area, like Grecian Isles. Yeah, and a lot of influence of water here. I'm seeing a lot of life by the water, just water everywhere, because there's so many cards that you've gotten that are like blue or have water influence in them. Let's see if there's any other things I can kind of glean in terms of geographical location or time period. I don't know off the top of my head when they think Derinkuyu, which is spelled Derinkuyu, I believe, if you want to look it up. I don't know exactly when that was created. So I would look it up to see if you want to see maybe more like timing, but that's kind of the sense I'm getting out of the Inner Truths card, is something about the period of time or area around when Derinkuyu was in Turkey, or when it was actively used. Now, to my understanding, they built that town, one of the theories is at least to protect from invaders. Like they would just go underground and there was like a whole basically like city they could live in under there, keep livestock in, etc. But yeah, your role in the society pile ones was definitely like a visionary, mystic, spiritual leader type. Now, I don't know what religion was in the area at that time. I assume with how ancient it is, probably some sort of paganry or paganism from that, like indigenous to that area, is to my understanding. But yeah, I'm not sure too much about the details of it, but let's see what else. Yeah, definitely heat, hot. I also don't know how warm that area of the world gets off the top of my head, but, definitely warmer than like Northern Europe, for example. That's all the vibes from the sun I'm getting here. And also the Six of Wands, too. There's a lot of like sunny, warm imagery. Let's see if there's anything else about you specifically. I almost wonder, though, if you kind of... Because with your She Who Changes Iris card here, it says transformation, change, enchantment. Like I said, I think you technically worked for like an organized religion in that area, likely like a paganism of some sort. Pagan belief, indigenous belief to that area, but like... I think you kind of hid some of the more mystical aspects of yourself because it didn't necessarily agree with the mainstream thinking of that religion at the time, but people who knew that they could come to you for advice for, like, I don't know if you were like a seer or a mystic of some sort. I definitely get psychic vibes off of this, like all over with visionary and the iris card, right? Um, yeah. You had to kind of hide it though, especially here. And the reason why I say that too is because in this card here with Iris, she's holding her hand to her throat, so it's almost like I get blocked throat chakra vibes out of that, like almost like holding something to your throat, like having to hold back, not being able to really speak truthfully on something. Or maybe you helped people under the guise of religion, like they would come to you and say, I want advice from the gods or God if it was monotheism, right? On this thing, and really, like, deep down it was something that you were intuitively thinking, but you knew maybe people wouldn't necessarily accept it in that form of the message, so you would say, like, you give the advice under the guise of the organized religions, like, template, I guess is how I would put it. But deep down there was, like, your inner truths card here, you kind of knew that was something coming from within or from the universe rather than, like, necessarily from the structure of that religion that you technically worked for. So yeah, I don't know if you were like a priest, priestess, something like that. Even true with your Paya leader, like it says, find no safe place to express your true feelings. It's like you had to hide a lot about yourself in this life, pile number ones. There was some aspect of the way that you gave wisdom or advice to people that didn't necessarily agree with the structure of how spiritual guidance was generally given at the time with the government or ruling structure that was an authority in the place that you lived. And like I said too, I especially see excuse me, yeah, not a lot of balance in this life, hence temperance reversed. Same thing with the hand. It says in need of help, assistance, and guidance. I wonder if you relied a lot on like donations or like a society, kind of like your community propping you up a little bit as like the local person that gave advice and guidance. Because a lot of times, at least to my understanding, people of religious roles were often, they lived on donations from their communities, right? At least to my understanding. So yeah, didn't live a very rich life, lack of balance in that area. I think you were pretty successful though in whatever you were doing, pile number ones, because the Six of Wands is all about victory. I think you were probably lauded in the community that you lived in. I think that people liked you a lot, maybe not necessarily the authority, but the people that you actually gave advice to and that listened to you, you were seen as like a leader, kind of a shining example in that community, someone that brought light here, especially with the sun. So someone victorious, someone that brings light, almost kind of a prophet in your own way, but not, a lauded one written down in a book, right? It was just that to your community, though, they knew that they could trust you, is what I'm seeing here with your cards and intuitively. But yeah, the Ace of Pentacles is kind of just a reiteration of the maybe poorness that you lived, lack of money, not having money available to you. But even so, it seems that you enjoyed this life, at least in terms of the satisfaction it brought you by helping people with your gifts, right? So yeah, I'm seeing somewhere either Eastern Europe or Western Asia. That's what I'm kind of seeing here. Of course, this is generating. Everyone's going to be a little bit different, so not everyone will have a past life in the same exact area, but definitely somewhere near water I'm seeing. Definitely some sort of guiding mystic for a community or religious group that you were in, right? And definitely an old soul. You've been here a lot, so you've had many lives here I'm seeing. So I'm going to clear the desk here. We'll talk more about maybe your lessons in this particular life that popped up. Someone that maybe had to hide a little bit. Your true abilities, you kind of had to guise them under a mask, but it still helped people. So you were like, well, I might be disguising what I'm really saying. I might be blocking my throat chakra a little bit with this, but it's still helping people. So, that type of thing. So I'm just shuffling my cards off camera here. Okay, let's get into the lessons of this life, pile number ones. So first up, we have Club. Someone will try to make you do something against your will. Okay, so that could have been threat of military violence. It could have been the structure of authority at the time, like we were talking about earlier. Maybe you had to really fight a lot with authority at that time. Maybe that's a prominent theme in this life as well that you're living right now. We'll talk about it in a second. Surrender your ego. Cultivate gratitude. Be of service to others and come from your heart. A big ego can work against you, but humility will further your goals. I had to deal with a lot of egos. It could have been your own ego. It could have been the ego of others. Okay. And then we have reframe. So that's what I was, oh my God, that's kind of what I was saying earlier. Like you had to kind of reframe a lot of things. Like, for example, like you might have intuitively gotten advice to help someone that came to you for advice, right? But you had to kind of reframe it as like, oh, this is what the God says, even though it was technically like your own intuition or like psychic ability in this life that was helping this person. That's like where you originally got it from. There's a lot about hiding yourself or masking your words. Yep. And then repair. 38. Making amends rather than fun times reveals a relationship's true constitution. I don't know if you had to like apologize a lot too to the authority. Because maybe, I don't know, we'll see what tarot cards come up. Something about like, especially with the surrender your ego here, it was like you had to like, oh, how do I describe it? Well, we'll get your tarot cards down, but it's almost like apologizing to authority here. Because maybe you did get caught at one point, not technically speaking the scripture or whatever the religion was. And like you technically flew under the radar with it, but oh, there's the Ace of Swords popping out, okay. Let's see what else pops out here. This one for sure. We have the Sun again. Okay, I swear I shuffled. You heard me, right? Okay, your lessons in this life. Yeah, speaking truth, definitely. The Magician. Making miracles out of what you have, as above, so below. We're going to just cover these a little bit because of the limited room here. Yeah, and then, Nine of Wands, perseverance. Okay. Yeah, pile number ones. I think this life, the lessons of this particular life that I'm seeing for you that we're talking about, or that was described earlier, I guess I should say, similar to what I said before, there was a lot about learning about speaking your truth here, especially with the Ace of Swords. There was a lot about throat chakra energy, like I was saying before, a lot about being honest about things, but almost kind of having to hide the honesty under a veneer of not lies necessarily, but putting them in a different way. And I think maybe earlier in this particular life you struggled with hiding it because you were like, well, I know that I'm not technically getting this wisdom or the spiritual advice from the higher source that I technically work in the religion for. So why should I have to hide it? That's kind of the theme I'm hearing here from this intuitively. Like, so I think that's where surrender your ego came up. It was like the struggle between, you know, do I keep my wisdom and psychic ability and advice to myself? Because if I say it honestly where I'm actually getting this from, you know, I might get in trouble, but that's the honest truth, you know, kind of almost like an ego thing. Or do I surrender my ego and say, well, I'll hide it as the dominant religion, knowing that if I cover it with a veneer of the dominant religion, it'll still help the people that it needs to help. That's kind of what I'm seeing here. So it was almost like the sacrifice in this life. It was a sacrifice of self for the greater good of others, pretending that it was this particular God or being speaking this advice, but really it was you or your own intuition from spirit, I guess is how I would put that. Yeah, as above, so below. But I think it frustrated you because you felt like you weren't technically being honest, having to hide it that way. So yeah, someone will try to make you do something against your will. That's definitely a lesson of like authority keeping, trying to make you like hide the way that where this truth was actually coming from. Even though you really struggled with like, well, I want to be honest, I want to be clear, especially with the Ace of Swords and the Sun, right? And then the Magician is like, you know, as above, so below, like manifesting, like, you know, guys, I'm actually getting it from this, but you know, like I can't necessarily say that in this social society I live in, you know, in this particular life we're talking about. Yeah, and then repair too with making amends rather than fun times reveals a relationship's true constitution. Yeah, you had to do a lot of patching and mending, I think, with this authority structure, like I was saying, like not necessarily apologizing, but you had to, it's like you had to cover yourself a lot. You had to pretend that, I mean, it's not necessarily that you didn't believe in this religion, pile number ones. It's just that you didn't, at least at first, believe in hiding where this truth and wisdom and advice actually came from. But I think over time, the lesson in this life was, you know, like your dream ritual card here says, reframing. Also too, like, just on top of it, sometimes advice, when it's reframed to other people, it comes off better and people are more willing to listen and follow it. So maybe at first in this life you had a lesson about maybe not coming across too harsh or blunt, and over time you learn to be a little bit more soft in your delivery of wisdom to people. But for you, maybe even in this life too, you'd be like, well, this is just common sense. Like, why aren't they getting this? Like, I'll just say it bluntly because, I care. But a lot of it about advice giving to people is about the way that you deliver it, not always necessarily just the message, right? So I think that was a major lesson in this life for you too, was how to deliver truth, right? And letting go of ego for the sake of, yeah, you couldn't be honest about necessarily where this spiritual wisdom was coming from, but you knew it would help people, so you gave up ego to be of service anyways, is how I would put that. So yeah, and then the Nine of Wands here too is perseverance. Perseverance. This also, I know we're not technically on the part of the reading about where this was. We talked about that earlier, but you also got the sun twice. And this is an Egyptian god here. So if it wasn't Turkey, for some of you, it might also have been a life in Egypt or North Africa somewhere, kind of around the Mediterranean, I'm seeing here. A lot of repeated imagery that way too. So somewhere around the Mediterranean, or like, North Africa, South Europe, Eastern Europe, near Asia, that type of area. Intuitively here, let's see what else pops out for you, pile number ones. Yeah, so in this life, probably maybe you've already learned in this life, because of this past life, how to be a very, very good advice giver, because you did live this life of learning how to deliver advice more softly and in a more packaged way, I guess is how I would put it. Very, very humbling, because in this life, for example, having this great psychic power to tell the future or give people advice, can make someone have a big head, right? Because you're like, oh, well, I have this power and I'm right, blah, 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 But by living through having to hide where it came from and not taking credit for those intuitive downloads and or advice to other people, it was a lesson in humility about surrendering your ego. And also probably dealing with the ego of, if you did deal with anyone that was like an official within this religion, in this area that this past life took place, you probably had to battle, and with a lot of perseverance here with the Nine of Wands too, a lot of egos with the people in charge too, that maybe didn't necessarily like at first when you were not hiding that you were the source of these, of the spiritual advice you were giving people, So also a lot of life lessons around your throat chakra, like I was saying, speaking your truth, being honest. Like your power leader says, find a safe place to express your true feelings. You maybe had to be a little bit careful about who you talked to, who you kept secrets from, etc., who you actually shared your truth with, right? Yeah. And then you're making amends card here, repair on the right. It says making amends rather than fun times reveals a relationship's true constitution. This here too, I kind of see it as like you help people patch their lives back together. I don't know if you also did some healing in some capacity, maybe some medical skill at the time. I know depending on the area of the world, sometimes people that were religious were also people that were like medicine or like healing people. Because with this repair card, it's almost like you helped repair not only people's souls, but maybe their bodies too. So maybe a little bit of a healer vibe there. It might also have been where your abilities came from, or it was in conjunction with intuitive things. It was also healing ability, right? Patching people together, patching relationships maybe too between people. That type of thing. All right, well, pile number ones, I hope that past life reading was helpful for you. As always, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next reading. Bye. Hello, my lovely pile number twos. Welcome to your pick a card reading today that is all about describing one of your past lives. Like most of my readings, this is going to be in two different sections. First, we're going to talk about who you were as a person, try to get some geography or maybe some timing on when this life occurred. Of course, everyone's going to be a little bit different because it's a general reading, but we'll try to pin down some geographic locations of some sort. Who you were, maybe what your role in society was, and then we're going to talk about the lessons that you learned in this particular life. Maybe even some triumphs, but generally kind of what was the education that your soul gained from this past life we're talking about. So I'm just going to set your lesson cards down here with me, and we'll talk about those more towards the end. And first we'll talk about who you were as a person. So as you remember, the card used to pick your pile was Celebrate the Sacred Gap, Give Thanks for Buffer Time. Okay. So we'll see how that works with the other cards before I say anything conclusive on the meaning. And then your Nature's Whispers is Acceptance of Love, number 38. Okay, let's see where that leads with the other cards. Accepting love, okay. Child Nature. Light attributes, friendships with animals, communication with nature spirits. Shadow attribute, tendency to abuse animals, people, and the environment. A lot of nature vibes here, pile number 2s already. Not only, like, look at all the green popping out, not only with your pile leader, but you have it here too. Talk about that in a second. You have Patience as your Sacred Destiny card. Patience. Okay. Your Elle Qui is, once again, a lot of green. She's even got green eyes here. She Who Knows, Yelena. Wisdom, Clarity, Resolution. Okay. And sorry if they cover each other a little bit, but you can always pause on cards as I hold them up or rewind. And your tea leaf is, yeah, flowers, happiness. Lots of nature imagery here, pile number 2s. I get the sense that this took place somewhere maybe very verdant, green, maybe even swampy. Just a lot of vegetation. Rainforest, swamp. Let's see what else pops out, though, with your tarot cards. I'll pull those here. Spirit, for pile number 2s, can you give me more description about who they were or kind of where they lived with this life? Lots of green in nature. Definitely something about this life was about being in tune with nature or living with nature or working with nature. You got the Fool that popped out here. Okay, let's see what other themes pop out. We have the Hermit reversed. So maybe more of a public life. Hermit upright normally would mean more isolated, but reversed is more in the public, I would say. We have the Four of Cups reversed. Caring a lot about people. Upright it would be apathy, but I read it in reverse as caring about things, right? Nurturing, and then we also have the Seven of Wands reversed. Okay, Seven of Wands, beating back adversity. That's how I would put that. Okay. Yeah, definitely nature vibes. I mean, you know, ignoring your tarot cards for a second, I'm just going to pick them up so we can look at your oracle. Green flowers, child nature, green flowers, or maybe not flowers, those are more like chains, but there's green jewelry on here. And then also too, your Patience card is like a marsh with the crane or the heron here. So definitely this life was somewhere very vegetation oriented, very, I don't know if you were a farmer, because with your child nature card here especially, this is about friendships with animals. Communication with nature spirits. It's a very heavy theme here we're seeing. So it could have been that this life you worked with animals like livestock for your means of making money or supporting yourself or your family. It could also be that you were some sort of, is it the Druids in Europe that were like, forgive me, I don't know too much about the Druids. I should because I probably had them in my ancestry, but forgive me, ancestors. Something to do with like nature spirituality or working with nature or some sort in this life. Could have been a druid as one example, or some sort of spiritual world that had to do with like nature spirit communing. I know not just European cultures did that with their indigenous populations. I believe also like Native Americans in North America, right, in South America, that type of thing. I believe also in Asian countries there were, probably African countries too, just all over the world there was a lot about communing with nature before a lot of organized religions came about, right? Because a lot of our lives did depend on, you know, how is nature doing, right? How are the crops doing, you know, how is the livestock doing, etc. But I think in this life for you, though, specifically pile 2s, you had a very deep connection with nature just because of all these cards coming out about happiness and flowers and acceptance of love, loving nature. Yeah, and then your pile leader is Celebrate the Sacred Gap, Give Thanks for Buffer Time. That almost makes you think of like relaxation. Let's see what your tarot cards say here. Also, your She Who Knows, wisdom, clarity, resolution. Yeah, you give me pile number one's vibes where there was some spiritual element to this life, pile two's, but not in as official of capacity as pile number one's did. And then your tarot cards, let's see, the Fool is about a new journey, taking a risk. The Hermit is reversed to be public of some sort, caring about people with Four of Cups reversed, nurturing. And Seven of Wands reversed is overcoming adversity or having struggles in some way with people trying to beat you down almost. Because the Seven of Wands, the traditional depiction is someone kind of beating back a bunch of wands, poking up at them on a wall. Yeah. Sorry if I'm silent for a second. I just want to make sure that I'm picking up everything intuitively. Yeah, something to do where your job or your main role in life in this past life was communing or working with nature. So like I said, that could have been a farmer, could have been working with livestock, could have been that you were in some spiritual capacity, like a speaker of or to nature for your society, that type of thing. Let's see, patience. Definitely a public figure of some sort with the Hermit reversed. You could have even been a leader of some sort in your society. Let's see if I'm getting any specific countries or geographies, though. Nurturing, maybe even, I mean, the nurturing with the Four of Cups reversed could be like nurturing the earth, as in you're pulling grain from it, nurturing grain and fruit and crops, etc. from it. Could also be nurturing like livestock. Another thing I also find interesting that I just noticed is that the girl in this card is holding a rabbit. And the first time I looked at your pile leader card, now I realize that I don't know if you can see this on camera, I realized that this white stuff coming off this figure's head is hair, but at first it almost looked like rabbit ears. So I don't know what rabbits would mean with this particular life. Maybe raising rabbits. I don't know if maybe you have an affinity for rabbits in this life that you're currently living right now. Maybe a spirit animal of some sort. But yeah. So yeah, you commune with nature, but not in a hermit way. You commune with nature in a public way for other people. Serving other people. Just knowing intuitively how to work with the earth a lot. Yeah, She Who Knows, wisdom, clarity, resolution. I'm trying to pick up more specifics about geography, though. A lot of vegetation and green, like I said. It could have been somewhere like a rainforest. Could have been just very verdant and lush, I'm getting, in some way, or a lot of green and flowers and animals. Yeah, I want to say South America for some of you, just because of the rainforest vibes I'm getting here. I'm trying to see where else. Some of you might have also been in like jungles in Asia with this past life, especially here with the Patience card, because to my understanding, I think, don't quote me on this, but the crane in this card is not only do they have the high mountains in the background, which remind me of the mountains in like China, but it is kind of like a marshy area, and I believe this crane is from like an Asian region. To my understanding, I think maybe Japan. I don't know if it's beyond Japan in its range, but yeah, so I'm thinking either a jungly area in South America or in Asia somewhere tropical is what I would say for this past life. In terms of timing, pile number twos, I think because you were so attuned with nature, you're kind of like pile number ones, where this wasn't an era that had, because as you notice the way that religions have developed over time, generally a lot of indigenous populations around the world, they start with, or like their religion for the longest time had been communing with nature and nature spirits, all across, Europe, the Americas, Asia, Africa. And then over time, especially with the Abrahamic religions that came out of the Middle East, right? Then religion became more about communing with a god of some sort in terms of like, and more human focused than nature Gaia focused, I guess is what I would say to my understanding. So this gives me more ancient vibes that we're talking about here, kind of like pile number ones were. But yeah, definitely somewhere tropical with jungles, I would say. Could even be like the Pacific Islands, more tropical. Very lush. Hawaii is very lush to my understanding. Haven't been there. Would love to go there someday, but yeah, that type of vibe. Maybe somewhere near the ocean, hence the Fool here. Oh, excuse me, I dropped a card. I'll grab that in a second when we get to the other section of your reading, but yeah, maybe near an ocean here because of the Fool. This card depicts the Little Mermaid, which took place originally in Denmark. But Denmark and, Scandinavia isn't very lush, so I'm not really getting a sense of Northern Europe here at all, but maybe some of the water here with the Fool here being the Little Mermaid. Yeah, I'm thinking somewhere. Yeah, ancient, lush, jungle, tropical, beautiful, almost like a paradise. And your job and role in the society pile number 2s was either interpreting nature or working with nature in some way. And I think this life was pretty happy for you. A lot of freedom I'm seeing, hence your flowers, which means happiness. A lot of being in tune with nature and having balance in nature, not like some of the issues we have nowadays as a societies, right? A little bit more in tune with, the balance of nature. And that was also part of your job or your role, was understanding nature and having patience. And I think too, especially with your Yelena card here from your Elle Qui, wisdom, clarity, resolution. I don't know if maybe you helped make decisions in this society, hence resolution, but also I think you brought clarity to people. So once again, like I said, you're getting a lot of pile 1 vibes where I think, especially with the Hermit reverse, like a public figure, a lot of people came to you for nurturing or advice on things. Yeah, and then the Fool too is like a new beginning. Overcoming adversity with the 7 of Wands reversed. I don't know if there was some aspect of where you were where... Oh, and this isn't very specific because this happened all around the world everywhere, but there was like an invading group that kind of took over or kept trying to take over the land that you and your people lived on, which, like I said, that's not very specific because that happened all around the world all the time, unfortunately, right? Not one of humanity's gleaming traits, right? But and I say that because not only with the 7 of Wands being kind of like tired out or having to fight, right? Standing up to adversity, but too with the Fool, it's almost like having to make a new beginning somewhere. So I don't know if eventually you kind of had to move from where you were from, or especially with the Patience card too being next to 7 of Wands reversed, it's like having to wait out something, having to wait out adversity or people trying to invade and take the land. Of course, as details get more blurry as we go more ancient, right? Because, the farther we go back, usually the less we know about what happened in history. But yeah, like I said, somewhere tropical where it, or at least like rainforesty, lush jungle maybe, where there was some sort of invading power that made you have to like live a new life or a new start somewhere, and a lot of adversity in that aspect. Though you were happy, so I don't know. I don't think you were ever either. Number one, I don't think you were ever involved in the direct fighting. I don't think you were a fighter type pile number 2s. And I think technically you lived very happily, like you were taken care of and everything was fine, but there is a lot here about adversity and new beginnings, and I get the sense intuitively that there's something to do with some invading power that was trying to take over where this land was. And I don't think they succeeded, hence the patience here. I think wisdom and, success won out in the end on, like your society's side, but it was kind of a pain in the butt for a while, to put it lightly, because there was a lot about, maybe even part of this nature vibe I'm getting here too, about the balance of nature. The invading society didn't really necessarily understand the geography or spiritual nature of the land like you and your people did, because you lived there for thousands of years probably, or hundreds of years at least, right? And so there was a lot of struggle over that, where maybe the invading society they didn't take care of the land as much, or didn't understand how to grow crops there or raise livestock there. And so there was a lot more destruction when they did try to take over, maybe took over parts of that land. And so part of your job was, or your worry in this life was about caring for the area, like the nature spirits and nature around where this area was in this life. Yeah. A lot of nurturing, especially with the 4 of Cups reversed, paying attention to things. Because it seems like the invading group just had a lot of apathy here, especially with that Four of Cups. Just did not care for your people or your land or the nature spirits, and maybe it kind of upset the nature spirits in that area. And so your role was kind of bringing balance back to that in some way. And that was one of your worries, was because they didn't take care of the land that they were trying to invade, right? You know, I mean, not only did you have the worry of, oh, there's an invading population taking over my land from my people, right? But number two, it was they didn't understand it. They didn't get it. Maybe a less spiritual society, you know? So that was your focus, yeah. Maybe even a focus, too, on love, hence acceptance of love here. Probably had a pretty good committed relationship in this life, pile number 2, is because of that card I'm seeing. Maybe a lot of children, too, hence maybe that's why rabbits came up, because as we know, rabbits, you know, they do tend to have a lot of babies. Or maybe even if it wasn't like children, it was like you treated a lot of the people of the society or town around you as children, sort of like almost a motherly or fatherly vibe with the society you were in or the community you were in. Yeah. So there was some, I think you were generally happy, but there was some adversity here, I think, with an invading force that just didn't understand the land and was just, didn't know how to take care of it, didn't know what to do with it, right? I think, like I said, they were beaten back, but there probably were many years in this life where there was adversity in that area because of that. Maybe you even had to move a little bit or make a new beginning, hence the Fool with this area after it was won back. But yeah, you kind of had to take a little bit of a leadership role in that. I think pile 2 is with the Hermit reversed, not hiding away, but being public. Yeah. Okay, so let's get to your lessons with this life. We're going to clear the board here. All right. Yeah, a lot of nature vibes. I don't know if you're a gardener or really in tune with nature in this particular life you're living right now, pile number 2s. And then, excuse me as I make chair noises as I reach the tarot card that fell earlier. I just want to make sure it's in there while I shuffle it. Okay. So let's shuffle these cards. Yeah, you have some invading force that just didn't understand the land or the spirituality of that land like your people did. Something like that. Okay, let's pick out your oracle cards here. We have the card Forgiveness. Hurt blocks our light. Okay, so one lesson was around forgiveness, it seems. Your dream ritual is surrender. Maybe the fighting stopped because your people surrendered. Oh, that sucks. Okay. And then we have surrender to the magic of who you are. We all have magic in us. See, look at that nature vibes again. I'm telling you, there was something with animals and nature. I swear to God. All right. We all have magic in us, even in the mundane aspects of life. Remember that you are a magical being with a uniqueness and worth that come from just being you. Yeah, look at that. And animals again. It looks like a white horse in the background. I don't think that's a unicorn. I think it's a white horse, but I didn't see a horn on it. But your tea leaf is moon. Changes in your life. Yeah, a lot of tumultuous change. Probably because of this invading force, pile number 2s. And let's get some tarot cards on the table here for the lessons in this life. Yeah, so far I'm seeing, once again, nature vibes with the surrender to the magic who you are. Oops. I can't take that many cards, Spirit. Sorry. As much as I would love to do a reading with 10 cards, I don't have room on my table. Alright, let's see here. We have the 6 of Swords reversed. Yeah, this is normally about making a way somewhere. Yeah, I'm getting vibes off that. We'll get in a second here. 6 of Coins, charity, equal dispersal. We have the Knight of Swords reversed, not being able to make motion or action. Oh, I wonder if you got captured. Wonder if that's why. Surrender. Okay. We'll pull out one more. We have the 5 of Cups reversed, moving on from grief. Yeah, pile number 2s. This life, I know I was saying before that I think technically the invaders didn't win. I'm going to retract that just a little bit with these cards from the lesson of this life. I think it was either a stalemate or like an agreement technically. Like they didn't technically win, but effectively they did. It could have been like a stronger, more imperial force that came in, took over the land, but made an agreement because your people fought back enough where they were like, okay, well, we'll make an agreement, right? So we'll, will get along, quote unquote, right? But so a lot of tumultuous change in this life. I think you were stuck behind. I don't know if maybe some of your family made it out, but with the Six of Swords reversed, that's like not being able to move on somewhere, not being able to change your location. Yeah, a lot of change in this area and the society at the time that you lived this life. So one of the lessons of this life here was dealing with change a lot, hence the Moon card, changes in your life. I don't think it could be in the life that you're living right now. You're very adaptable, and one of the reasons why you're adaptable in the current life you're living as you watch this video is because you lived this particular life and maybe some other lives surrounding this one where the karmic lesson was dealing with change all the time, dealing with adapting to harsh surroundings or harsh realities, especially too here with surrender. I don't think your society necessarily won this battle. I think it was a stalemate or an agreement. Like, hey, we'll stop fighting, but effectively we rule you now. That's kind of what I get the sense from this. Unfortunately, I don't know much about the history of tropical areas before, or at the certain time period I was talking about before, like what invading forces this might have been, but if you research into it, I'm sure there'll be more specifics about maybe what the society taking over yours was. Yeah, moving on from grief here with the Five of Cups. A lot, I think earlier in your life, you dealt with a lot of grief because of this invading force, because they didn't know how to treat the land where you were, plundered it maybe a lot, maybe didn't give it the respect that your society did when you were in control of this area geographically. Couldn't move on, maybe got trapped, maybe got captured by the society, hence surrender. So maybe you actually technically had to work for this invading force or people that came in. And then Six of Coins, Pentacles is about balance or like distribution, charity. And then the Knight of Swords reversed is like not being able to make a move mentally, not being able to take action in terms of thought or the way you spoke. Yeah, so I think there was a lot of struggle with assimilation with this new society that took over culturally for over your peoples in this life, pile number twos. A lot of struggle around it, a lot of having to learn to accept the new, maybe even having to give up traditional values because of the invading force that came through and culturally tried to oppress where you were, the people that you were, right? I think in private, though, you still were able to kind of keep to your old faiths and your old beliefs and cultural values, right? Especially with surrender to the magic of who you are here on the right. I think the society that took over, though, it was a lot more, what's the word? Like I said, not in tune with nature is one aspect we talked about before, but they just weren't they weren't as spiritual as your culture was. And so, like, it was like your society or your culture saw more of the magic and everything than the society that took over that you had to adapt to. But it was like so another lesson, I guess would say in summary, is that you had to learn how to keep that magic and belief alive despite the adversity or the oppressive forces of the society that took over, I guess is how I would put it. And maybe even forgiveness in the end, by the end of this life. Maybe not necessarily forgiving the invasion, not forgiving the, atrocities involved, but likely forgiveness in terms of at least moving on yourself so that you could live your life and not be stuck in the sadness of what had happened and move forward, I guess is how I would put that. Because oftentimes one of the lessons I've had to learn myself with forgiveness is when we hold resentment, it's like resentment is like drinking a poison yourself to hurt someone else. So that's kind of what I'm hearing here with this lesson, is learning to let go of resentment of this new society. As atrocious as what had happened was, it was like, it kind of in the end, it's like, well, what are you going to do? I mean, because you can't yourself just force them to leave and get out and not take over this land, right? Which really sucks, but, unfortunately in human history and human societies, that happened quite a lot all over the world. So, one of humanity's ills, right? Taking things from others. Having to surrender to changes, but also keeping yourself and your identity and who you are alive despite being taken over here, I'm seeing as a life lesson. Yeah, and being stuck too. So I don't know if you were a prisoner of war at some point with this invading society in this tropical area we're talking about. And then the Six of Pentacles is interesting because that's all about charity. I don't know if you helped a lot of people in your community that were the culturally the same as you before it was taken over by this invading society. Trying to help just keep each other alive under the oppressive force. That's kind of what I'm seeing with Six of Coins, because it's like the charity card, right? And living and adapting to a society where, you know, earlier in your life there was a lot of grief over what had happened with the Five of Cups, but moving on beyond that grief and living life as best as you can anyways, despite a lot of adversity in your earlier years here, I'm seeing with the Five of Cups reversed. Yeah. And Knight of Swords reversed is all about, yeah, not being able to take action mentally with things you want to say or the way you think. Having to live under oppression, I guess is how I would put it. And having to learn to move on or adapt to it just to survive. That's kind of what I'm seeing here. So probably in this modern life that you're living right now, pile number 2 is you're pretty tough, is how I would put it. Because obviously, you know, not just with this particular life we're discussing right now, but obviously, I think we tend to have somewhat similar lives as we go through certain lessons, you know, depending on how much was learned in each life and how much you have to come back for that specific lesson. But I think if you're really, you know, tough right now in this particular life you're living, it's because of lives like this one we're discussing, where you had to do with a lot of adversity and oppression, a lot of having to hide who you are, a lot of having to move past grief and early adversity and being stuck. But still finding the magic, still finding the light, still adapting and living your life despite outside pressures like that. Still finding the good and still helping your fellow man here with the Six of Coins, despite all the pressures put on you, right? Yeah, so likely in this particular life you're living right now, like I said, probably a tough person, probably generous here with the Six of Coins is another aspect. And that was a lesson that you learned from this life for sure, having to deal with that adversity. Making a lot out of little. Or making as much as you could out of little, right? Yeah, and then, yep, forgiving here with forgiveness. So to summarize, the lessons of this life, pile 2s was, or were adapting to changes, thriving under adversity and oppression, and then also forgiving and surrendering to things we cannot control and thriving despite that, I guess is how I would put it. So, yeah. Well, pile number 2s, I hope that reading was helpful for you. As always, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next reading. Bye. Hello, my lovely pile number 3s. Welcome to your pick a card reading today that is all about describing a past life of yours. So like most of my readings, this reading is going to be in 2 different sections. We're first going to talk about generally who you were, maybe get some geographic details and or timing details of this life if I can. Of course, everyone's going to be a little bit different in a general reading, so not going to be able to specifically point to a town of some sort, but maybe generally what geographic region this took place in. And then we're also going to have a second section of lessons learned in this particular lifetime and or triumphs, struggles that you had, right? So without further ado, I'm just going to set these cards down here with me. These are your lesson cards towards the end. And apologies if you do hear any meowing in the background. I've said this on videos before. My cat does not like when I close the door to record, so sometimes she meows pitifully at the door because she wants cuddles really bad. So apologies if you do hear meowing. So without further ado, let's get to your reading. We have your pile leader. As you remember, it was number 15, Build and Breaks, Saunter Slowly was the subtitle. We'll see how that ties in here as we discuss your oracle cards from generally who you were. We have Keep Your Dreams Alive, number 25. Okay. Keep Your Dreams Alive. Lovely card. Beautiful. Your archetypes card is Child Wounded. Light attributes: awakens compassion and desire to serve others or other wounded children. Opens the learning path of forgiveness. Shadow attributes: blames all dysfunctional relationships on childhood wounds. Resists moving on through forgiveness. Okay. Your sacred destiny is going forward with some hilly background, very verdant hills. Almost kind of reminds me of Ireland, right? Gorgeous. Never been to Ireland. I would love to go someday, of course, though. Okay, and then your Elle Qui is She Who Regrets Eclat, or Eclat, Battle, Victory, Bitterness. Okay, so we've got some vibes already going here. Maybe a warrior of some sort in this life. I also had a reading the other day that had the same exact card that pulled out, so if you did pick that reading in that video, that might be a little bit of a synchronicity for you. My pile number 3s. Alright, and sorry for cards that kind of cover each other, but limited space. And your tea leaf here is dog close up, pleasure with a close friend. Okay. And then let's pull out your tarot cards here. Like I said, though, I'm already getting a sense of a warrior of some sort. You know, it was interesting. Pile number 1's kind of had a spiritual figure. And pile number 2's had sort of a spiritual figure. So far, you're seeming more like this life was on the physical side of things, with the warrior vibes I'm getting here. And then strength, yeah, what did I say? Warrior vibes all the way. A lot of physical things, okay. 3 of Wands, plans for the future, enacting plans. Maybe tactician vibes with wars. Let's see what else pops out. We have Temperance reversed. You know, pile number 1's got that too, lack of balance. And then we also have, let's see here, 9 of Wands reversed. Pile 2's got that, but reversed this time. Struggling with adversity or determination. Feeling like wanting to give up, okay. Could also be some hints towards geographical location and or timing. So let me look at your cards here. Pile number 3 is this life. Warrior vibes, like I said, especially with child wounded. Also, the kind of protective vibes of your archetypes card here. This figure has their arms around 2 children protecting them. Definitely like defender vibes here. And then a clot here too. Standing on a hill of bones, or skulls, I should say, with flags all around her and a sword. Definitely a fighter. Even if maybe not necessarily a willing one. Martial type life here, pile number 3's. Your strength card kind of says the same vibe to me. Strength, having to fight. Let's see, and then keep your dreams alive. What else pops in? I think you lived a pretty comfortable life though, pile number 3's, especially with your build and breaks card, because this figure here, I'll hold it up, looks pretty content. She's obviously resting, like your build and breaks kind of says here on the tin. Saunter slowly. Could have been a mercenary, because mercenary is usually made, to my understanding, at least correct me if I'm wrong though in the comments, they usually made pretty good money off of martial victory and skill. Maybe even tactician vibes, even if you weren't necessarily on the battlefield, pile number 3's. I think you might have worked with making plans, hence the 3 of Wands, because, well, the 2 of Wands is more about, I guess, thinking about going forward in the future, but the 3 of Wands here is about actually climbing a ladder, climbing on plans, heading forward, right? But a lot of adversity with the 9 of Wands reversed, feeling like wanting to give up, you know, too, with your sacred destiny here, going forward, having to trudge on, having to march, you know, maybe even literally, if not just metaphorically, right? Having to trudge on. Let's see if there's any geography I get here. Pleasure with a close friend, too, tells me either you worked with animals, hence, you know, a lot of times in martial-oriented lives, war, we have, you know, horses a lot, or other beasts of burden that we ride on, right? Horses are generally the most common aspect or example, I should say. Also, I know sometimes people, I don't know, did they use dogs in fighting? They might have. Maybe using dogs to help fight, I'm not sure. Animals of some sort, though. And then also pleasure with a close friend tells me that you had kind of a group that you worked with a lot, and mercenary companies tended to be, well, this might just be more of a media cliche, so if anyone's a historian and can correct me that knows about mercenary companies, right? But they tended to be very close, at least to my understanding. So maybe close friends at least, even though there was a lot of harsh fighting involved. But I think you live very comfortably because of like your build and breaks card. And keeping your dreams alive. So you had a reason for the fighting. It wasn't necessarily like you were fighting against your will. Which kind of happened to pile number 2, so that was more of a, not their choice thing. I think for you it was a choice because of the money that it made, about a way to keep your dreams alive and live comfortably. You know, maybe you came from a poorer background and you knew that maybe fighting or being a warrior was one of the few ways that society where you lived let you actually make money and be respected. You know, it wasn't, it wasn't just, you know, easily handed to you like someone that hereditarily, you know, inherited something. It was something you actually had to work for. Let's see what else pops out here for me. I'll see if I can get a bit of a sense of place. I said Ireland earlier, and then you also have Tamlin here, I believe is the folklore myth behind the strength card with the red hair and the plaid tartan, right? I definitely get like the British Isles, that type of vibe, you know, with red hair, especially the Irish. You know, even the, she doesn't have red hair in the Three of Wands, but she's got like the red cloth on her head. And even like the red halo around the Temperance card's head, right? So some of you, like I said, general reading, everyone's going to be a little bit different. So not everyone's going to have the same exact past life that we're talking about here. But I think some of you at least were in the British Isles in this life as a mercenary of some sort, or some part of Western Northern Europe. With the red hair I keep seeing. Let's see what else pops out here. Otherwise, someplace pretty hilly, especially with your going forward card. Lots of hills. Maybe not as lush, especially here with your clock card too. I get a lot of bareness, fields, clouds, maybe even more, if not Western Europe, maybe more like the steppe of Asia. Or the steppe of Eastern, I think it's technically more in Asia. Like, I think of like the ancient Scythians, right? Like, if you ever heard of the legends of Queen Tamiris, right? That kind of vibe. I don't know if there's any timing though. Let me see if anything pops out to me. Pile number 3s. Let's see, 15, 8, 3. 9. I'm gonna say, and unfortunately I wasn't able to do this for the other piles, but a number is popping out for me, for you, pile number 3s. I'm gonna say somewhere from the 900s to the 1300s was this life, I think, for you. I know it's quite a big range, but like I said, everyone's gonna be a bit different as a general reading. But yeah, I think you were a mercenary of some sort. I don't think you fought for country, necessarily. I don't think you fought for a cause other than your friends, your family, or yourself employment, I guess is how I would put it. You might have been wounded badly at one point here, especially with child wounded. I know that more means like inner child wounded technically with this card, but so maybe at one point you kind of had to stop fighting because you did get wounded really badly. Or maybe you just kept going, because I think of, if you ever heard of, what was his name? He was a German mercenary. Getz of the Iron Hand. He was one of the first people in the world that had a prosthetic hand, that we know of at least. Read his story. He's fascinating and kind of hilarious, actually. Getz of the Iron Hand. I think he was German, if I'm not mistaken, but lots of wounds, though, yeah. Because also, too, with a clot here, she who regrets, not only is it winning a battle in victory, so there's a bit of Six of Wands vibes there, but it's also about at what cost, kind of like I explained in the other video where this card popped up. Victory, but at what cost? So even though you were successful, and I think technically you lived a pretty nice life because of this martial victory or thinking, battling, etc., I think there was a lot of cost to you, not only physically, pile number 3s, but also maybe even mentally. Of course, back then they probably didn't know what PTSD technically was. But of course, as we know now in modern society, with modern terms, maybe even some PTSD in this life because of all the battles that you saw. But I think you were well respected, at least in terms of like your physical strength. Hence the strength card, a lot of willpower, a lot of, you know, hey, I'm gonna live the life that I want to. I want to move where I want to. I don't think you necessarily stayed down or had a family in this life. I get more of an independent sense with this. But yeah, unfortunately though, yeah, you might have made good money, you might have been able to travel where you liked, but there was a victory, but at what cost kind of twist to it here with your clock card, right? And going forward too, I don't think you sat down very long. You just kept moving, kept going. Maybe even people would tell you, hey, maybe you need to rest a little bit. I think you got a little bit of a gangrenous wound in your leg there. And you were like, nah, I'm going to keep going. I mean, obviously, maybe not that. Gangrene probably would have killed you at that point in time, right? With the medicine they had at the time. But yeah, that type of thing. Let's see what else pops out here. Yeah, child wounded. I think also, too, you were very young at heart in this life. Very optimistic, I think that's maybe one of the reasons why you were able to chug along so easily despite setbacks with mental and physical health from all the fighting. So maybe in this modern life that you're living right now as you watch this video, you still have that toughness. You still have that, like, oh, I don't need to rest, I'll just keep going. So maybe there's even kind of a double-handed lesson here that you're still learning about, learning when to take breaks, hence build in breaks, saunter slowly. Maybe that's still a lesson you're learning now about burnout. But part of the beginning of this arc, of this karmic lesson of keeping going despite setbacks, or despite maybe you should take a break, could have started with this particular life, and that might be why it is pertinent for you to hear about this life right now as you're viewing this video, right? Let's see, temperance reversed, lack of balance, yep. All work, no balance. Fighting. Nine of Wands reversed, though, does speak of burning out a little bit at the end, so maybe towards the end of your life in this particular past life, you burned out a lot quicker than other people because you had so much wear on your body from all this fighting, and yes, victory, but at what cost, like we talked about with your o'clock card here on the right. Yeah, very tough. Did not give up. Lived well. Lived loudly, I would say. I wouldn't say necessarily a party animal, but you had what you wanted because you made such good money at what you were doing, right? Living a dream. But it wasn't the fighting that you liked. I mean, you weren't creepily into fighting and, being on the battlefield, but there was so much driving you that, and it was something that you were so good at that you were like, well, this is the way to keep my dreams alive. This is how I keep my dreams alive. This is how I breathe life into what I want, despite my beginnings as someone that didn't inherit a lot of money, or things weren't handed to me on a silver spoon, I guess is one way to say it too. Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, some of you might have been, at least my knowledge of European history, sometimes children that were, especially sons, right, that were not the firstborn, that weren't going to inherit a title, sometimes they would go into martial fields or war fields because that's all they had left for them as a second or third son. They weren't going to inherit, like, the first son, right? At least that's my understanding of, like, European history generally with monarchies and, more masculine lines of passing things down in inheritance, right? So, could have been you were, like, a second, third, fourth plus son. Yeah, I think just because of, if this took place in Europe for you, like I was saying, perhaps Western, Northern Europe, right? Yeah, and then for those of you where I was saying, like, I got almost, like, Scythian vibes, like the steppes of Asia. Same thing. Though, unfortunately, forgive me, I don't know as much about the history of that geographic location and time period, so... Yeah, wore yourself out, though. A lot of battling, a lot of fighting. We're good at it, did well. Not so good on your body and your mind, though. Yeah. Okay, well, let's get to the lessons part of this life for you, pile number 3s. I'm going to take the tarot cards back here, shuffle them back in the deck. Then we're going to clear the desk here to make some room. Yeah, and then maybe you did have a dog in this life, or like I said, it says pleasure with close friend, or a close friend. Could have been you worked with an animal, like a horse of some sort, in your fighting. Could have been if you didn't have a family like I was seeing before that you raised on your own, maybe you liked working with animals a lot. A lot of close friendships, right? Anyways, let's keep going before I ramble too much. Okay, I'm gonna shuffle my tarot deck back here. Oh, sorry, my chair tends to squeak. I try not to shift in my chair during recordings because it squeaks really bad. I should just put WD-40 on it, but I'm lazy and I haven't done that yet, so if you hear a squeak, it's my chair. Alright, and let's get... Okay, that's all shuffled here. I'll set those back here. I'm going to look at your oracle cards. So, lessons from this warrior life of yours, pile 3. So we have... Well, look at that. 31, intention. Lacking personal direction begets confusion in life as a pawn to someone else's game of chess. Yeah, not a lot of personal direction in this life, at least at the beginning, pile 3s. Especially when you're a mercenary. What are you but a pawn in someone else's game of chess, right? A rich lord, at least the way I understand it worked in Europe, right? A rich lord says, hey, I need a bunch of meat shields to fight this war for me against the guy that I want to take his land, or I want to defeat him if he's attacking me, right? Mercenary basically was a pawn in someone else's piece or game of chess, right? Before I ramble too much, let's get to your other cards. Transition, maybe a lot of struggle when some of the physical, mental things started cropping up on you from all this battling, struggling with a life lesson of learning to settle down and move through different phases of life. You know, also too, I think with the wounded child that came up earlier, there could have been a lesson too about, I think you wanted to be very optimistic and young for a long time, at least mentally. And so transitioning into different phases of life was maybe difficult for you in this life, because it's almost like wanting to mentally stay young forever. Surrender low self-esteem. You deserve success, love, and abundance. Set an intention. Well, look at that, intention. Set an intention to identify and release any remnants of low self-esteem. Could have been you kind of saw yourself as a weapon to be used in this life. You didn't really see yourself as an independent thing. Yes, you had your own dreams, like we were talking about earlier. That's what kind of fueled your dreams, was the money made from this pastime of being a mercenary or a warrior of some sort. But, excuse me, it wasn't necessarily that you were fighting for yourself, right? Wheel. Indecisiveness, allowing your life to ramble aimlessly. Yep, that's with your intention card here. Definitely one lesson that's popping up here. Let's get your tarot cards on the desk here, though, before I ramble too much on each card individually, as I tend to do. Forgive me. All right, Spirit, for pile 3 is lessons from this life, if you could, please. Sorry if my voice gets a little scratchy and I clear it a bit. I should probably take a drink, honestly. I'll take a drink while I'm pulling out cards here. Excuse me. One moment. Okay. 7 of Wands reversed. I think pile 2's got that too. Yep. Struggling with adversity. Wanting to give up. Ace of Wands. A new spark of something. Okay. I think I'm getting a little bit of an intuitive download from that one. Let's see what else pops out. We have the Hierophant reverse. Breaking traditions. Yeah, that's okay. Yep. I'll speak on that in a second. And the Emperor reversed. Look, King Arthur. With Excalibur, I believe, in his hands. And then we have, I believe this is this Buffalo Woman, her name is? Forgive me. And then John Henry over here. I believe this is a Lakota figure here with the Hierophant, though, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, pile number 3 is lessons from this life. Theme number 1. You often let other people control your life. That was one part of this lesson, right? We see with the wheel here, indecisiveness, allowing your life to ramble aimlessly. I'm going where the wind takes me. I'm going where I'm told. Give me money, and I am your pawn. Especially here with intention. Lacking personal direction begets life as a pawn to someone else's game of chess. You were the knight on someone else's chessboard. Moved around at their whim. Especially here, too, with, I think, what fed that in this life was low self-esteem. Maybe you thought all of your worth was in what you could do on the battlefield, pile number 3 is. And so when you weren't on the battlefield, or someone wasn't telling you where to fight, you felt useless, hence here with transition too. And I think maybe that's why you burnt out so quickly, was because you had a hard time transitioning into different phases of life, like we were talking about. I think maybe mentally you wanted to stay a bit young. You always thought you were younger than you actually were. Let's see what else intuitively comes out with that. Yeah, it was like the mindset of well, I'll be young forever, and your body and your mind, though, from all this fighting was catching up to you. And you really struggled with transitions between different phases of life because of that, because it was like for example, it could have been, you know, when you transitioned into an adult, you were like, well, I still kind of want to have that young mindset of no responsibilities or less responsibilities, right? You know, and then when you transition maybe more into middle age, there was a bit of difficulty realizing, oh, my body can't do everything that it used to anymore. That type of thing. There were issues in that area with this life I'm seeing for you, pile number 3 is, excuse me, I have to take another drink. My voice is getting a little bit scratchy. I just want to make sure I don't cough right into the microphone, right? Not fun for you. Yeah, and then your tarot cards here too. Breaking traditions, lack of structure, lack of authority. Yeah, you know, I think the Emperor reverse just speaks too of that lacking authority in your own life, lacking logic in your own life. It was kind of like You were the wheel on the wagon someone else was driving here, pile number 3. So you just let everyone kind of control you in that way because you thought, well, at least if I'm making money out of it, I'll be someone else's pawn. There was not really a lot of thought around what you were doing or why in terms of what actually was occurring on the battlefield. So, I get the sense maybe in this life you didn't think too much about, who am I actually slaying on this battlefield? What does the outcome of this war or this battlefield really, really like mean for the people in this area or my own people or, the politics of this country I'm in? It was more just like, well, I'm making my money and I'm living young and living high on the hog, so that's fine. That might have been part of it. So I think, yeah, it was like one of the lessons was learning more about the effects that you had on the things that you participated in that you thought you were just doing for your own good and you thought it wouldn't really affect anybody, but there could have been a lesson, some sort of, maybe one time you fought in a battle that had more of an effect on things you cared about or people that you cared about than you thought it would. Hence that lesson, right? Also learning more personal direction, pile number 3 is here with intention in the wheel. Transitioning through different phases of life, feeling younger mentally than you actually are, like we said earlier. And then let's look at your tarot cards here. Learning not to push yourself too hard too with build and breaks. Like I said, that might even still be intuitively something I'm seeing as a little bit of a thing you might struggle with in this current life you're living right now as you view this video, right? So take more breaks, pile number 3. So don't burn yourself out. Yeah, 7 of Wands reversed is wanting to give up. Feeling like everything is against you. Ace of Wands is a new spark, finding a new spark in life. So part of the lesson too, when your body started to give out in this life, pile number 3 is from all of the fighting and all the physical activity it was doing. I mean, because think about it, even nowadays, like in football, for example, and people that are in wars today, there's a lot of physical toll it takes on the body when you do a very physically activity oriented job, right? Hence why like football players tend to retire really young, So maybe part of that was learning a new spark in life after you were no longer a pawn to someone else. You weren't just a knight on someone else's chessboard against another, player in the game, I guess is how I would say it. Maybe learning a new creative skill with the Ace of Wands here. This is like an ink brush, right? Maybe you started more of a creative venture after your body started giving out and you couldn't fight anymore. Finding more internal ways to find satisfaction and a direction in your life. Could have been writing, could have been drawing, art, etc. And then the Hierophant too is about, especially reversed, is bucking tradition or finding new patterns and letting go of negative patterns from the past, right? Yeah, I don't know if maybe you inherited that mindset from your family or your parents in this lifetime, pile 3 is. That could be one interpretation of bucking tradition. It could have been just what was expected of you too, especially like I was saying before, if this was like a European life, to my understanding, a lot of, European inheritance roles and cultural mores was about, the first son gets everything and everyone else just kind of has to deal, So it might have been, learning to, the effects of traditions like that aren't necessarily, maybe always wise or the smart thing, but, we do it because it's the thing we've always done, right? Haha. Not always the smartest thing, right, though? Traditions can be bad. Patterns from the past can be bad, so that's the Hierophant reversed right there. Learning about, where traditions in society didn't serve you, is another theme I'm seeing here. Also in your own life with this life, pile 3 is about, this tradition of, well, I'm a warrior, that's what I do, fight, 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 fight. And then near the end, when your body started giving out, you couldn't fight anymore, to the detriment of your own life if you were to go back on the battlefield. Having to give up, something you'd done for so long here with the Hierophant reversed and find maybe a creative passion to follow instead with the Ace of Wands. So it could be in the life that you're living right now that you are a very creative person because of a seed that was planted in this particular life, pile 3s. And then the Emperor reversed, once again, gives me a little bit of an indication this could have been the British Isles because this is King Arthur to my understanding. Yeah, this is King Arthur. Emperor reversed is lack of logic or lack of authority. Could also just be that similar theme as with the intention and the wheel, right? About not being a pawn of someone else, about being an authority in your own life. So being reversed, it's like asking for more of that energy. So the lesson was about bringing more authority and personal direction in your life instead of just being a pawn for somebody else. Could also tie into the bucking tradition here, where things didn't make logical sense with tradition, and how it affected your life was part of this lesson too. And like I said too, with surrender, low self-esteem, a lot about treating yourself not just as a tool to be used, but as a human being that needs breaks. You know, a human being that grows and changes, you know, a human being that has rights of their own to live their own life and not just be, like I said, a pawn to tradition, a pawn to society, a pawn to, you know, some warlord or, you know, noble that says, hey, I need, you know, a meat shield that I'm going to hire for my war that, you know, I'm too lazy to fight myself, I guess is how I would put it. Or, you know, I'm putting it a little bit more in a funny way, but that type of thing. Seeing yourself as someone worth something that's not just a tool to be used on the battlefield, right? So that, you know, was definitely a lesson with this life too. Yeah, so pile number 3 is I hope that reading was helpful for you. As always, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next reading. Bye.